Today marks 1 year since the conflict between the Sudanese armed forces and the Rapid Support Paramilitary Group began. The situation there has precipitated what the UN calls one of the worst humanitarian disasters in recent memory, displacing more than 8 million people, taking the lives of more than 14,000. In tonight's Prime Focus, we take a look at Sudan 1 year later, now on the brink of collapse. Here's ABC's Marcus Moore.
In Sudan, the concussion from explosions pierced the air, and black smoke blankets the horizon. The capital city, Khartoum, and its more than 6 million people now in the throes of a violent struggle that has taken thousands of lives and disrupted the livelihoods of millions. On April 15th last year, simmering tensions exploded into a full-blown conflict as two generals who've controlled the country since seizing power in 2021 prepared to hand over authority to civilian rule. Dr. Bilal Khalid landed at the airport just as fighting began.
Women screaming, children crying, quite like terrible images, to be honest, being inside that building. And you can imagine it's congested, like so many people. And then suddenly all the bags, people just threw their bags aside. Nobody cared about their bags anymore. And even I left my bags there.
He describes a state of confusion among many in the airport that day, which was one of the first areas to see fighting.
In the past, we've never experienced a conflict in the capital city like this before. Usually, most of these conflicts are in peripheral areas, and we thought, okay, maybe these clashes, maybe they are trying to topple the current government or something is happening, but it will finish in a few hours.
It marked the beginning of 12 months of horror, intense street battles and airstrikes, reports of unspeakable crimes against women, and internet blackouts. The UN says it is the largest displacement of people in the world today. In the days following the start of hostilities, there was a scramble to safely remove foreign staff from embassies in Khartoum. The U.S. conducting a daring operation, deploying SEAL Team 6 to airlift dozens of American staff out of the country. Calls for a ceasefire have gone unanswered. So far, there has been no pause in the violence.
How brutal has the fighting been in Sudan?
How brutal can you think? That's literally the answer I can give you. In terms of the stories, from people being dismembered, tortures, of the most horrible scenes.
El-Bashir Idris is an analyst and one of the emerging voices on the situation in Sudan.
It's a war that, under international law, has broken every single rule and code of conduct.
The war has made an already fragile humanitarian situation even worse. 8.2 million people forced from their homes, the majority internally displaced inside Sudan, while nearly 2 million have gone to neighboring countries like Chad and South Sudan. 18 million people in the country are facing acute hunger, according to aid groups.
We are extremely concerned that we will see catastrophic levels of hunger.
Lenny Kinsley works with the World Food Program in Sudan. They provided meals to 250,000 families at the end of March, but she says it simply won't be enough in a few months' time.
Can you give us a sense of how the situation is with hunger today versus a year ago?
Yeah, so hunger has nearly doubled in the last year. So right now in Sudan, we're in the harvest season, which is typically when food is more available and there's less levels of hunger. It's the time of the year where we see the lowest levels of food insecurity. But right now we're looking at 18 million people, 37% of the population, who are in acute levels of hunger.
Aid groups say more and more families are becoming food insecure. Kinsley and others are urging the warring sides to establish safe routes for aid to get into the conflict zones. The IPC, which is a rating for hunger across the globe, shows Sudan is approaching level 5, the highest level, or a catastrophe phase. Calls for international aid are growing louder. The United States has committed nearly $1 billion in aid, but officials say that is not enough, and only a fraction of that money has actually reached Sudan.
This year is supposed to be the Super Bowl of democracy in terms of voting and elections happening all around this year. But what about conflict and humanitarian situations? This just may be the World Cup of atrocities that we're looking at.
Through it all, brutal fighting has continued.
The situation in Sudan risks creating the world's largest hunger crisis without action, without the immediate scaling up of assistance. And there is no hyperbole that wouldn't hit the mark on this. There is no hyperbole. This is how bad it is.
As the large wheels of global government churn, everyday people are trying to do their part to meet the urgent need. They include 22-year-old Yusuf, who doesn't want to use his last name for security reasons. He's Sudanese, living in London, and was compelled to start a food kitchen in Omdurman, Sudan. The city of 2.3 million people sits just west of Khartoum.
We realized that there's room actually that people they care, they wanna help how they can.
He turned to social media to get the word out about the situation in Sudan and the need for food. He says the money raised goes to a team of volunteers who buy food and deliver to families using this tuk-tuk.
What we provide for them actually is a lentil stew, but we fortify it with peanuts. The reason why we do that is because Sudan is a major peanut producer, so the peanuts are quite cheap. And also in terms of nutrition, it's a very good source of nutrition, peanuts.
He says they feed 200 families every day, a lifeline for those at a time when hope is once again being tested in Sudan.
There definitely is a sense of feeling isolated, feeling left alone. But unfortunately, this is not really a new case for Sudan. I think more than anything, what I've heard is they're holding on to whatever last hope that they have left, that this war can end, because that's really the only hope they have left to eat, to survive, to make it through another day.
Clinging on to hope in the midst of so much desperation and despair. Our thanks to Marcus Moore for that.